There's a lot of bad things going on in the schools. There's school shootings. There's drugs in the schools. The kids are not meeting literacy standards. We rank in the middle somewhere in industrialized nations. Some people rank us between 10th and 17th in terms of how well our students read. There's teachers having sex with students. Go down the line. Kids don't have a concept of right and wrong anymore. And when someone comes into the school that might be a model for morality or might be a model for something a little different than what's normally taught, which is if it feels good, do it. It's persecuted, it's oppressed, those kind of people and their ideas. Just examples. A case that the Rough Institute's handling now, they want to do an instrumental version of Ave Maria. That's been ruled unconstitutional. A high school ensemble group wants to do it, just not the lyrics, but the music to a song called Ave Maria. Most of the teachers in the school didn't even know what Ave Maria meant. They just thought it might be religious, so it was banned. Kids want to hand out Christmas cards at Christmas. They're told it's unconstitutional. You can't have Christmas trees in the schools. So there's this idea being pushed forward that if it's religious, it's automatically unconstitutional. The Rough Institute has a case with a high school valedictorian, the best student in the school. She was asked to speak on what was most important to her. Las Vegas High School, her name's Brittany McComb, and she just wanted to mention God and a few Bible verses. The school actually cut it out of the speech, said you can't do it. She was brave enough to go ahead and give the speech, but the day that she gave the speech, they actually censored and turned the microphone off so she couldn't speak. So it's become a problem. We have no freedom for basically religious people and specifically Christians for whatever reason. Which brings me to a very important case that we just received an adverse ruling on in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. It concerns Coach Marcus Borden, who has won National Coach of the Year's honor, community awards for all the great things he does in the community. And but what's happened to Coach Borden is he's been told that he can't bow his head when his team prays at the football game. Silently bow his head. Not that he's saying anything. In 2005, the school passed a policy, his school in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and told him that although the students can pray, he couldn't say anything, and he had to excuse himself totally from the huddle. He initially resigned, but then he said, I'm not going to resign, I'm going to fight this. So he came back, and with the help of the Rough Institute, we filed a lawsuit. For 25 years, the school's allowed coaches to be there when the students pray. For 23 years, Borden's been there. And again, this is an award-winning coach, a very fine man. He's not a negative influence. But here's the prayer that when Borden is standing with his players, he silently bows his head. This is what the students pray. This egregious few words here. Dear Lord, please guide us today in our quest, in our game, our championship. Please let us represent our families and our communities well. Lastly, please guide our players and opponents so that they can come out of this game unscathed, no one is hurt. That's the prayer. It isn't a prayer to Jesus or Allah or whoever. It's just a non-denominational prayer. They're saying the coach can't be there with his players, which of course the players want him to be there. And I've asked people, what should the coach do? It takes 10 seconds to say this prayer. Should he run off the field? Run back on the field? It's ludicrous. Originally, the lower court in this case held that he had a right to free speech and freedom of association to be with his players. Now we have a Court of Appeals court saying he has none of these rights. Just because he happens to be a teacher, he can't silently bow his head. We hope to fight this case in the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should hear this case and reverse it because it's ludicrous. It's going to wipe out honored years of tradition. Coaches have been doing this from the time football began, and all of a sudden they can't do it. The question is why? We become a politically correct society. If someone might be offended, no matter who they might be, things are erased. And what is the target right now happens to be Christianity, for whatever reason in the schools and in certain public places. Political correctness does not stand for diversity. It stands for uniformity. It's Orwellian. And what it means is no freedom. And I keep telling ACLU lawyers and people like the Americans United for Separation of Church and State who argue for a totally secular society and for doctrines like this, that sooner or later this is going to turn around and bite you. You're going to eliminate one part of speech, and then you're going to face a domino effect eventually. Eventually, on government property, the government's going to be telling you don't have any free speech at all. That's where it's headed. So they're really the so-called civil libertarians arguing these kind of arguments are setting a trap for themselves and for America. And what it means in the end is there'll be absolutely no freedom in the United States.